Well, here we are. Thank you for staying with us on this first day of this new month. We've hit February, and it is a beautiful day, isn't it? Well, it comes with a lot, and we'll be getting into some of the Baka Vomawo joining the conversation. He is going to be sharing his thoughts on myriad matters with us this morning. Oliver, good morning. I'm saying good morning as though you were here with us, but good morning all the same.
Good morning to you. I hope you're doing well.
I'm well. Hope you are too.
No complaints whatsoever. Hey, it's the month of improvement, so it's a lot of reinvigorated spirits that's come up in the month of February. So we're good.
Right. We thank God for the gift of life. Right before we get into the papers, I took a screenshot of a post you put up. It has to do with our youth in Ghana being the best place in the world, and yet we seem to be in the quandary that we find ourselves. My phone is taking pretty long because of just how much data is on it, or information. All right, so here we go. So your post says, Ghana is the best place in the world. I don't understand why 9 out of every 10 young people want to move abroad. So strange. And the reactions on this post, amazing. What made you put up this post, and what made you put it up, and what do you really think in that regard?
The strange reality we live in.
Right.
I'm trying to tease conscience in a bit. Like, for instance, there's another one where I was talking about Ghanaians in the UK. You never find Ghanaians in the UK trying to raise funds on Facebook to send someone to the hospital. Our situation is not normal, like wake up. So that's the kind of post I generally post to tease out people's attention to the things we've normalized, and we don't really understand why we have normalized them. And perhaps it pushes them to reflect a bit more on our situation. Now, there's no country in the world where 90% of young working adults, or adults who should originally normally be working in that age group, want to just up and leave the country. You know, like there's a certain adventure to see the world, but not to move abroad. Like countries, and a lot more countries, a lot of people just want to travel and have the opportunity. And that's why a lot of the times after high school, people will take a gap year, or in the first year of college, they'll try to travel abroad a bit and then come back and settle and find a good job. But it's not our reality. And it's a question that we need to ask why. That after so long of independence of a land we fought for, and that we continue to say to ourselves that we must fight for, a lot of us just want to check out and find opportunities abroad. It's both a loss of hope in the Ghana project.
The Ghana project?
I have rediscovered my faith in the Ghana project. There were times past where I had lost hope, you know, and now it's a different. I think that to lose hope is to allow others to win. Right. Because I believe that when you have countries, even when you see countries in civil war, like what happened in Liberia, there were still people who were looking to be leaders of broken countries. And it doesn't matter how much Ghana gets broken, beaten. There are certain people whose only interest would be to occupy the public space and enrich themselves, no matter whatever is left in that broken system. So if we lose hope, we only encourage those who have nothing, a luxury we can afford. I think that's kind of where I've come back, running away from a destiny. And I think I've been caught and pulled back into it. So there's no hope lost here.
No hope lost. Let's get into some other stories right before we delve into the newspapers. And of course, we look at the stories from different angles. Now, there's a story on myjoyonline.com, and you being in the field you are, I felt you might be interested. It's a story talking about the JB Dankwa Edu case, the member of parliament who sadly, many years ago, lost his life. Now, guess what? A pathologist who conducted the autopsy on the murdered Ibwakwa North member of parliament from back then has blamed the theft of his personal computer. It's Eduse, who told the court just yesterday that despite examining the body in 2016, the report submitted to the court was dated February 2018, and it goes on and on. He talks about a conference in Germany where he said thieves broke into his house and stole everything, including this computer. I have a few questions. The first one How does this happen in the jurisdiction where you find yourself? Do things like this happen? I mean, how much of a rarity is that? And secondly, with some...
So this case is nothing but all strange, right? Like there's so much angles to it. Like every time there's always a new fact, there's a new discovery, there's allegations of high level involvement in the case. And there's nothing normal about the fact that persons who are working and investigating the case get their house burgled. It's surprising that this is the first time we're hearing about it, because there's a deep connection one can draw between the murder itself and this. And I suppose a lot of people's mind is going haywire. But I want to kind of come back to the basics. At the time the incident happened, did he around this or what's happened in court, which has been reported, clarifies the point as to whether or not a formal police complaint was made at the time. At which point, because from all indications, it seemed like a staged burglary where other things were taken as well, including his personal devices. At which point did he make the connection that perhaps people might be after the pathologist report that was on his personal device? So there's still a lot which is quite unclear about the system, and this reflects it. If a person of a high profile, as a member of parliament, can die in such mysterious circumstances, and there's dilly-dallying and there's unclear commitment to bringing perpetrators to book, it sends worrying signals down to us, the nobodies, right? Like us in the lower segments of society who have been traditionally ignored, as to whether or not the same sense of urgency and professionalism will be attended to the case. Regarding the use of his personal device, I don't want to fault him on that. I think that generally we forget that in so many public institutions and office spaces, persons are not provided with devices and office devices for them to work with, and that a lot more people have recourse to their own devices. It happens in the public sector, it happens in the private sector. And it's not particularly strange to me that he would be working on his private device. But I think the bigger questions as to whether or not the police were involved and what investigations were carried out at the time when the incident happened and what connections were drawn in that connection.
Right. And maybe the final issue I'll run by you before we start digging into the papers. I'd like us to look at this entire Burkinabe situation. Their team is doing wonders in the AFCON 2021, but we can't say same for their country in terms of political stability. And here we are again, another president bites the dust, so to speak. The system has caught up with him, Roch Kabore in this instance. And we've had ECOWAS respond, as usual. And this time, it's sanctions again. And I don't know whether this is becoming, because we heard the ECOWAS chairperson say that we must set an example and we must do all of that. But you look at the example that has been set, the trajectory, and it's not worked. It's not done much in Guinea. It's not done much in Mali. I think it was Guinea that recently ousted, I could be mistaken, either one of Guinea or Mali that ousted the French representative.
Mali.
The French representative in the country. And now we have Burkina Faso. What is your take on this entire matter? Some have said, look, we should expect more coups in the coming year, for example. What is your take, and why are we frequently having these putches in our part of the world?
3 points. The first one is I always smile when people draw incidences and connections between the AFCON and incidences like this. I saw Kwesi Enin talk about how in the lead up before the 31st December coup in Ghana, the Liman administration had decided not to participate in the AFCON that was happening in Libya. And then Jerry Rawlings does the coup, and then Ghanaians jubilate at the fact that they were going to go back to AFCON. I think it's strange to see that Burkina Faso do so well, where there's so much noise around what the political situation back in Burkina Faso is in that regard. The second thing I want to talk about is, first of all, the question of coup itself. And somebody had to reorient my mind that the real coup that happens or is happening in West Africa isn't, this peaceful transitions where you see military take over the reins of government, but the real coup is the fact that certain people have taken over the public purse, over the public space, and using it to enrich themselves at the detriment of the vast majority of people. That is the real coup that undermines the social contract that people have with their leaders and leadership. And a lot of times we focused on, small incidents like this that's only replace who is in a leadership position without reflecting on the injustice, which sometimes is generational, goes over decades, that continues systemic poverty and recycles this. That is the real coup that eats at the soul of young nations. And I think that situation is very prevalent in the entirety of the sub-region, and we live it every day. We live it when we see, some of the incidences and the kind of death levels that we are seeing in Ghana, where we cannot even pinpoint to what benefit and what new benefits have been brought into the lives of Ghanaians. Those are coup that we have learned to live with and normalize. ECOWAS approach, which is the final point on sanctions. I think that one of the, all over the world, there's a general consensus that sanctions do not work. And if you followed a bit of my writing on this, when the sanctions on Mali came in the first time, I was glad and I feted the Guineans for saying that they were not going to uphold the sanctions. First of all, Mali is a landlocked country that depends on its neighbors that use the ports. The same situation is what Burkina Faso finds itself as a landlocked country that is very dependent on countries like Ghana to be able to get stuff to them. The real people that suffer are citizens. They are denied access to basic amenities, and not the leadership who have a different an obstinate or believe that things have to be reformed in a particular way. So they do not have the intended effects. In fact, worse, they impoverish the people. So it's not surprising to me that the sanctions have not worked and that people are not even minding them. When you saw the situation in Mali, telling enough in the region. So I do hope that ECOWAS has a rethink of strategy and is much more attentive to the needs or the everyday normalized coup that happens in people's life that they do not seem to pay attention to. As far as Ghana is concerned, I think that a lot of people are drawing similarities with Ghana. I do not think that a coup is imminent in Ghana at all. In fact, I think that the people who we are expecting to do the coup, which is the military, are in bed with the political class, that they have been so well sorted out that they do not share the same economic anxieties that we do. And so I do not think that military intervention is likely. A lot of the times when the military do this, they have to also be feeling the pinch. And in our case, they are not. So that's kind of my take on that.
Are getting the perks of the system here, that makes it very unlikely to happen. That's an interesting thought. But let's move this conversation forward. Let's dig into the Daily Graphic newspaper. UTAG ready to negotiate. I don't know whether that warms the cockles of your heart, Oliver, but the story is on page 16, and it says, the University Teachers Association of Ghana has said it is ready to negotiate, but the posturing of the employer is not welcoming. The president theatres, there were no concrete milestones on the table towards meeting their demands. And we're fast approaching day number 21, or meltdown day, or D-Day. We've heard from the students. Yesterday I was interacting with the coordinator, I think, for the University Students Association of Ghana. Was it the National Union of Ghana Students? All of them pointing to the fact. In fact, he mentioned live on the show that I put the question to him about where he would lay the blame, whether he felt lecturers were being insensitive. And he said, no, it is the employer that is being insensitive. It is the employer that is getting us into this situation, and they must remedy it. They've been unfair to the lecturers. Do you feel there's enough will to get this thing done? Because mind you, Oliver, students are home even when the 21-day limit hasn't hit. What do you make of it, and what would you like to see?
Well, one, I think UTAG has always been open for business in terms of negotiating and moving the situation forward and having clarity. They have done so in the many times where they have kind of, just rescinded the decision and given government time to negotiate, which is something they did in this case as well. If I think that nothing is moving, is from the end of a government that is legitimately cash-strapped. When I say cash-strapped, I mean in terms of a bulk of our resources is servicing a particular class that a lot of us are not getting access to. Now they are struggling to be able to find sources of funding. They have borrowed the country to their neck. If there are savings to be made, it has to be genuine cuts from the political class for them to cut down on the perks and expenditure to be able to allow people within UTAG to also get a fair shake of the national cake. Regarding students, I am apprehensive. I mean, I hear what you said about the National Union of Ghana students, and I'm surprised to see the silence of students in general. There's a point where the student unions, and I use unions to kind of evoke sort of a trade union sentiment here, where we're very vocal, we'll take to the street, and we're more protective of not only students' interests, but teachers' interests. In this case, you have both. You have students who are wasting away at home, who are unclear as to what the academic calendar looks like, and with all what COVID had done to academic administration, this has also come to add to the pile of confusion. I was expecting a much more robust, mobilizing, a much more confrontational approach from student leadership in bringing their people to bear, in demonstrating, in petition, how much they're giving UTAG, but also what it means for the uncertain futures of thousands of Ghanaian students. Unfortunately, when you look at the COVID fund administration, 40,000 of that was given to the National Union of Ghana students for handover and leadership training. Unsurprising to me that they issued a statement in support of e-levy. So perhaps it's a bit of capture there. They might do, statements like the one the guy made to you, but nothing more. Doesn't show a commitment to mobilizing and really bringing their voice as key participants in the conversation.
So
it's
they themselves,
and the employer.
They have themselves not lived up to expectation, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about the e-levy, your favorite subject, the e-levy. I know I'd get you smiling there. Page 17 of the Daily Graphic, e-levy still high on the agenda, and government is going to push for this even as we go back to the August House today. Tied to that, we have stories like on My Joy Online, Dr. Ali Nachia, the tax lawyer, an expert, talking about the fact that we risk increased youth unemployment, money laundering if e-levy is passed in its current form. And yesterday we had quite a discourse. Now, just to summarize for you, you would notice that in our sub-region, the countries like Uganda, Tanzania, Kenya, and those who are implementing it at a little above 1% are doing so on the service fee or the service charge, which is the 1% we're already paying. So they are taking a percentage of what the telcos pay. Those who are charging something different from the service fee are implementing anything between 0.2 and 0.5%. Here we are in Ghana, where you might end up paying 1% both ways, which is 2% if you want the person receiving the money not to have any deductions, and then add a 1.5% as per the revised e-levy figure. What do you make of it?
I'm grateful for Dr. Ali Nachia's voice in this, but it's also reflective of the fact that all these things would have come up, and brains like this would have helped fine-tune the conversations around the levy. Like, we shouldn't now be having this conversation ex post facto, right? Like, it has to precede before we even get into that conversation. I remember the current vice president, who has been involved in economic policy making in this country for a while, and is also an integral part of this government's economic management team, talking about the former administration and saying that, there was a proposed tax on savings, and saying that to even think about it, the fact that you even thought about it is reflective of some deficiency in even how to govern the country. And it's so weird to see kind of the same words. One could easily use the same words with regard to this tax and how we are proceeding on it. So if there's anything I have, is the failure of consultation and failure of an open and honest, credible conversation that moves us from the echo chamber that partisan folks tend to have into a more societal approach into dealing with the problem.
Right. The Ghanaian Times newspaper now, COVID-19 nationwide vaccination. Government launches 5-day campaign, and that is slated for tomorrow, the 2nd, all the way till the 6th, that is in this month. And it targets vaccinating some 2.5 million people, and that is a push for herd immunity. There's also the Ghana Health Service administering 10 million COVID-19 vaccine doses nationwide. And don't charge subscribers for SIM registration, Telecommunications Chamber says. I guess in Ghana, we take advantage of every situation. Now we're hearing that people are, like I saw this story where, I don't know whether it was the UK or the US, and some nurses had made about $1.5 million from giving out fake vaccination cards. Well, here too, guess what? People are charging people to get SIM card re-registration, when in fact, It shouldn't happen. In fact, coming en route today, I was listening to the BBC and they were talking about the fact that people were having to pay to cut corners for the Ghana card, for example. So it appears endemic, isn't it? Your take?
Oh, it is endemic. I remember you and I had a conversation around vaccine mandates, and then I said, well, you can mandate it, but what is going to happen is that it's going to create a sub-economy where people are going to be shifting and selling and all kinds of things. But it's a very desperate economy. And once you give people these kinds of, easy layups, they're going to smash it. And that's what we have done in this situation. We've created an artificial deadlines around these issues. We've created an artificial situation which could have been easily remedied by data sharing. And for which reason we've not only lost critical hours and critical productive hours by people who are being asked to, to form unnecessary queues, but desperation sets in and people want to get it easily and quickly. And so people then prey on that vulnerability. And it's unfortunate that time and time again, we put people in these situations where we find ways for their pocket to be picked. I think it's completely intended and artificial in creating the situation we shouldn't have been there in the first place.
Let me just run this story by you. Just one from the Finder newspaper. The rest are basically captured by some other papers as well. But we are fighting corruption with systems, not rhetoric. Guess who's saying that?
Please don't tell me he's any Ghanaian politician.
Well, it is. It's Mr. Vice President, His Excellency, Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia. He says they are fighting corruption with systems, not rhetoric. The same systems that the latest corruption perception index suggests we should build, the same institutions. How do you react to this? The opposition NDC has taken him on in recent times, posts here, blasts from the past in terms of what he said versus what we are seeing. As a citizen, what's your thinking?
I'm afraid that I'm going to say something that destroys the young man's intentions or eyes on the presidency. So
I don't think whatever you say would achieve that, but I would like you to be as blunt as possible. What is your thinking on this?
Not me being blunt, because I do not see it in all honesty how can I have any credible and serious faith. Seems surprising to me for anybody to contemplate that this is in fact what is happening in Ghana.
So in other words, you're not holding your breath. You're taking his words with a pinch of salt.
If I was to hold my breath and wait for this young man to save me, I would be dead. I'd rather not hold my breath.
He is head of the economic management team, and he's telling you that we're fighting corruption, we're building systems, and you don't believe him?
Well, the corruption, like you have talked about, remains one of the biggest drains on public resources and our ability to effectively manage the economy. And so if the economy is in tatters and where it looks like we're heading into a serious financial crisis, their words, not mine, then that tells you a lot about the holistic management of the economy generally. Over 5 billion Ghana cedis has been lost in 1 year, 12 months, by the state-owned enterprises. Nobody is talking about anything. We've not reviewed the causes that led to the loss. Nobody has lost their jobs. Nothing has happened. 5 billion in a year, which is almost approximate to what the government wants to collect in e-levy. So I don't know how seriously we are having that conversations and when the systems are going to kick in. I mean, it's been 30 years of systems and rhetoric. And
Director Roberts Knapp, Czech delegation applauds government. And there's Apiate tragedy. Explosion truck had escort. Whether it did not or did have it, it's been quite a banter that we've had. And this story captured here. Veep courts churches to fight corruption, tied to what we just did. But let's look at the Hawk newspaper.
Wait a second. Is that a system he was talking about? Churches to fight corruption?
I guess it's part of it. Well, the churches can also encourage us to fight corruption, I believe. Anyway. So the Hawk newspaper now, and of the stories there, I'll look at this one. On the back page, Richard, 32, fulfills his Adisco dream after several attempts. Now get this. 32-year-old Richard Oponi Mafu has gained admission into Adisado College, his dream school, after 5 BECE attempts. I mean, in 2010, he sat the exam, got Samo High School and all of that. So many things, and he's finally landed his dream. Talk of tenacity. and not giving up. He's dealt with shoes and all of that. At 32, he still wants to pursue his dream. I mean, I want that to, I don't know how you'd react to that, especially tied to what we started the conversation with, your post about people wanting to leave the country. And here's someone who's right here who wants to achieve a dream of entering senior high school.
Yeah. No, I think it's a beautiful story. I read it and I was all feeling. I was all in the feelings.
Right.
Particularly because for me as well, at this other college was a dream school. I never got around to choosing it. I was swayed in other directions.
Oh wow!
But it genuinely resonated with me, and it's a school that I have every love for, and I'm happy to see somebody finally get in. I think stories like this, we do not amplify them enough because we are so focused on the rat race of life, of making money, bills, and that we don't understand that our time in life doesn't have to be by anybody's standards or anybody's chronology or anything. People just have to live their dreams, and I'm absolutely happy for the gentleman.
Right. So to wrap the conversation in the next 2 minutes or so, Economy Times: government misses fiscal deficit target, and per this story, the government's fiscal deficit has widened further, recording an end-year deficit of 9.7% of GDP, slightly higher than the target of 9.4% for 2021. So recorded 15.2% and 12.6% of GDP, respectively. Sometimes we don't all get the OPPP and the GDP and the debt and all those things, but the fact is we're not in the best of places economically speaking. Wrapping with the BNFT, a change of guard takes effect at Wassa, and there's value of Momo transactions drop by 3 billion Ghana cedis. That story is on page 3. And it says the value dropped by 3.2 billion in December last year, less than 1 month after Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta announced the 2022 budget, the impending imposition on an electronic transfer levy. I think it's Uganda. When they implemented this levy at 1%, within just about a few months, it was so bad they had lost a quarter of Momo transactions, and they had to quickly peg it down to 0.5%. What do you see happening should the e-levy pass through? That's my final bit to you, Oliver.
I think that the government tells us that they also anticipate these astronomical drops, people's resilience in wanting to protect their revenue from theft. And so perhaps when their calculations are wrong and Ghanaians out of desperation do not return back into the money apps, that they might revise course or change course. But I think the biggest hope for me is that we do not even get there, that the theft is defeated in the People's Parliament, that we don't have to go through the painful experience of a slowdown economy and economic transactions that we need for this country.
Oliver, are you suggesting that the Majority Caucus in Parliament is trying to foist theft on the people of Ghana? Is that what you're suggesting? Because the Majority Caucus wants the e-levy.
I think we even operate a constitutional framework that encourages theft of the political class against the people. So theft is inwritten into the fabric of governance in this country, but particularly pocket and taking your money away with no just cause. And yes, I don't think a lot of them are reflective enough of their role as accomplices in encouraging naked theft of Ghanaians.
Finally, I know I've said this, but a thought just came to mind briefly. They have stipulated that the finance minister has said that we'll use the e-levy when we get it for road infrastructure, for different things. They have apportioned, and they have even apportioned percentages and all of that. Do you have faith that should the e-levy go through, they will actually come through with those things that they've apportioned the finances for?
No, I do not. I think that what is more likely going to happen is that they are going to collateralize the levy and borrow against it. And once they do, we'll be stuck in a perpetual situation where the levy never goes. We have the same situation with ESLA now, which is the energy sector levy, which now has also been used to raise a bond. And so we have to, they're going to go to the money market and borrow against it and use it for other ends. I mean, there's nothing guaranteed. There's no legislative framework that is put in place that binds them to use it for a particular or one other purpose. In fact, we have created the petroleum stabilization levy. We have created the petroleum fund, even for instance, and the heritage fund, where politicians are talking of dipping their hands into it and using it for other purposes, even where there's legislation saying that they shouldn't do that. So I don't think that's going to happen at all.
Oliver, do you have a blissful day? Thank you so much for joining the conversation. Always a pleasure having you. And that's how we wrap it up this morning on the news review. But coming up next, we have a lot more in the sporting terrain that we're bringing your way on the AM show. After that, we hit our big stories. You don't want to miss them. It's going to be all about Parliament, the e-levy, and more. Stay. We'll be right back.